Why is my mate standing at the back of the room? The Alpha King's voice cut through the Silver Pine pack house before Lila Mercer even realized he was looking at her. 1 second, she was on her knees beside a spilled glass of champagne, trying to save the old scent registry from the puddles spreading across the marble. The next, every wolf in the hall had gone silent enough to hear the ice crack in someone's drink. Lila froze with one hand on the wet pages and the other gripping the skirt of her white dress, which was now stained gold from Brielle Hawthorne's expensive champagne. Brielle still held the empty glass, her pretty mouth open in the kind of shock rich girls save for moments when cruelty stopped being private. "Your Majesty," Brielle said softly, trying to recover. "I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. She's just the registry girl." Someone behind her laughed once, then immediately regretted it. Alpha King Damon Ward stood beneath the ironing glass archway in a black coat dusted with snow, his crown absent, but his authority not needing decoration. He looked like a man who could make a room obey by breathing slower than everyone else. Tall, pale-eyed, controlled. The kind of alpha mothers warned their daughters to impress, and fathers warned their sons not to test. Lila had seen his face on national pack broadcasts, on election night oaths, on the silver coins used during moon ceremonies. She had never seen him look confused. He looked confused now. Not weak. Never that. But something inside him had clearly moved before his pride could stop it. His gaze stayed locked on Lila like he had heard a song no one else could hear. Lila stood too fast, nearly slipping. "I'm sorry," she said, because Omegas at the bottom of the hierarchy learned to apologize before anyone accused them. "I didn't mean to interrupt the ceremony." "You didn't," Damon said. His voice was calm, but the air around him wasn't. Every wolf in the hall felt it. The low pressure of his royal wolf pushing close to the surface. Lila felt it most of all, not as fear, but as warmth under her ribs, sudden and impossible, like a match struck in a room she thought had been cold for years. Brielle's smile sharpened. "With respect, Your Majesty, Lila Mercer is a rejected Omega. Her record is sealed. She isn't eligible for any formal bond recognition." There it was. The old wound, dressed up in polite language and served to the whole room. Rejected Omega. 3 years ago, those words had been whispered, then repeated, then engraved into her life, so deeply even strangers seemed to know where to press. Lila lowered her eyes, hating herself for it. Council Elder Malcolm Greaves stepped forward from beside the ceremonial fire, silver hair smooth, hands folded over his cane. "The young lady's registry is quite clear, Your Majesty. A previous rejection was witnessed and archived by this pack. We should proceed with the loyalty oaths." Damon did not look at him. "Then your archive is wrong." The hall seemed to inhale. Malcolm's face tightened by half an inch, which on a council elder was practically a scream. Lila's fingers curled around the damp registry. "Your Majesty, please don't do this because you feel sorry for me." That finally made Damon move. He crossed the floor, and the crowd split for him so quickly several noble Omegas almost tripped over their own gowns. He stopped 3 feet from Lila, close enough for her to catch his scent. Cedar, cold rain, and something wild held behind locked doors. His jaw flexed once. "I don't feel sorry for you." He glanced down at the ruined pages in her arms, then at the champagne stain on her dress, then at every smiling face that had gone pale since he entered. "I feel angry that everyone in this room knew where you were standing before I did." Lila forgot how to breathe. Behind Damon's eyes, something gold flashed and vanished. His wolf, watching her, recognizing her, choosing her. Damon removed the royal signet pin from his coat and fastened it to the edge of her soaked shawl with hands that were steady, though the room was not. "Until this registry is reviewed," he said, turning just enough for the whole pack to hear. "Lila Mercer is under royal protection." Brielle went white. Malcolm's cane tapped once against the marble, and in Lila's hands, the wet registry warmed like it had been waiting years to tell the truth. The room did not move until the royal signet clicked shut against Lila's shawl. It was a tiny sound, almost delicate, but it landed harder than any gavel. Every alpha in the Silver Pine Hall understood what it meant. Damon Ward had not proposed. He had not softened. He had not promised love in front of a room full of people who collected promises like weapons. He had placed the protection of the North American throne over a low-ranked Omega with champagne on her dress and humiliation still burning in her cheeks. Council Elder Malcolm Greaves recovered first, because men like him treated shock as something that happened to other people. Your Majesty, he said, smooth as polished stone, royal protection is a serious declaration. Surely we can discuss this somewhere less emotional. Damon finally looked at him. You mean somewhere with fewer witnesses? A few wolves dropped their eyes. One guard near the door looked suddenly fascinated by the floor. Lila wished she could disappear into the marble, but the signet pin was warm against her chest, pulsing once, then again, like it had found a heartbeat it recognized. Brielle Hawthorne gave a soft laugh that did not reach her eyes. This is very generous of you, Your Majesty, but Lila has always been sensitive about her past. I am sure she misunderstood the evening. No one meant to embarrass her. Lila looked at the soaked front of her dress, the wet registry in her arms, and the circle of noble faces that had been laughing less than 2 minutes ago. That is a lot of accidental cruelty for one room, she said quietly. The words slipped out before fear could catch them. Brielle blinked. Damon's mouth did not smile, but something near his eyes changed. Malcolm stepped closer. Miss Mercer, I would advise restraint. Damon's royal wolf pressed through the air before he did. Not a shift. Not a threat with teeth or claws. Just pressure, old and cold, the kind that reminded every pack-born person in the room that hierarchy was not a decoration. Malcolm stopped walking. Damon said, You will not advise her while I am standing here. Lila turned to him then, really turned, and for the first time she saw the cost under his control. His shoulders were square, his voice steady, but his wolf was not calm. It paced behind his eyes, restless, furious, certain. It was not reacting to beauty, or pity, or scandal. It was reacting to a lie. Damon lowered his voice, so only she could hear. Can you carry the registry? Lila swallowed. I have carried worse. His gaze flicked to the champagne stain, then back to her face. I am beginning to believe that. Those simple words almost broke her more than the mockery had. Malcolm cleared his throat. The loyalty oaths are scheduled to begin in 5 minutes. Then they can wait 6, Damon said. Every oath in this building is now under review. That was when panic finally reached the room. Not loud panic. Rich pack panic. Tight smiles, quick glances, fingers touching phones inside suit pockets. If the Alpha King reviewed Silverpine's oaths, he would review land rights, succession claims, mate records, leadership votes, everything people like Malcolm kept locked behind ceremony. Brielle stepped in front of Damon with a practiced softness. Your Majesty, please. A rejected Omega cannot be worth risking pack unity. The silence that followed was ugly. Lila expected Damon to answer sharply. Instead, he looked at her. Are you rejected? The question should have been easy. It had followed her for 3 years. It had been written in files, whispered at grocery counters, folded into pitying smiles. Still, with the royal signet warming against her skin and the wet registry breathing old cedar and moon silver into her hands, Lila found she could not say yes. I do not know anymore, she whispered. Damon nodded once, as if that was the only honest answer anyone had given all night. Then he turned to the room. That is why I am not asking your permission. Malcolm's cane tapped against the marble again, harder this time. For 1 second, Lila smelled something sharp beneath the elder's clean cologne. Burned wax. Silver ink. Fear. The registry in her arms grew warmer, and beneath her thumb, a page she had never seen before loosened from the binding. The loose page did not fall out like paper should. It peeled free with a soft, sticky sound, as if the registry had been holding its breath for years and had finally decided Lila was allowed to know. She stared at it in the middle of the Silverpine Hall, while every important wolf in the room pretended not to lean closer. The page was old, cream-colored, and blank to anyone standing more than a foot away. But under Lila's thumb, the ink rose in thin silver lines. Damon saw her face change. What is it? A hidden entry, Lila said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Somebody stitched it under my rejection record. Malcolm Greaves moved too fast for a man with a cane. That is private council property. Damon's hand lifted, not even halfway, and 2 royal guards stepped between Malcolm and Lila like they had been waiting all evening for someone to make a poor choice. It is evidence now, Damon said. Brielle's perfume sharpened with nerves. Lila could smell it beneath the roses and champagne. Too sweet, too practiced. The hidden page warmed again, and the scent trapped inside it unfolded through the room. Not fully. Not for everyone. Just for Lila. Burned wax. Cold iron. A winter storm. And under all of it, her own name, written in a scent memory before she had ever stood in that hall. Lila's knees nearly gave out. Damon noticed. Of course he noticed. Kings noticed weakness. Wolves noticed pain. But he did not grab her or make a scene. He only stepped closer, blocking half the room from seeing her face. Breathe, he said quietly. I am breathing. No, you are arguing with air. Try again. It was such a dry, unexpected thing to say that a tiny laugh escaped her before she could stop it. His eyes flicked down to her mouth for half a second, then away, like even that small softness had to be handled carefully. Lila drew in a breath. Cedar. Snow. Royal wolf. The warmth under her ribs answered him, and that scared her more than the council did. This is not just about my record, she whispered. I can read scent memory. I always could. My job was never just filing. The registry talks, if you know how to listen. Damon went very still. Who taught you? My mother. Before Silverpine told everyone she ran because she was unstable. Malcolm's voice cut across the hall. Enough. This is an emotional display from a girl with a documented rejection mark. Lila looked down at the page again. The silver ink rearranged itself into 3 words that made the air leave her body. Mercer bloodline restricted. Damon read them over her shoulder, and for the first time since entering the hall, his control cracked in a way the whole room could feel. Not rage. Not violence. Something colder. Recognition. That is royal language, he said. Malcolm's face turned flat. Old language. Irrelevant language. No, Damon said. That phrase is only used when a bloodline has legal standing near the throne. The whispers started then, fast and hungry. Lila barely heard them. She was staring at the page while 3 years of shame shifted under her feet. If her rejection had been forged, then every laugh, every lowered gaze, every door closed in her face had been built on a lie. Damon turned to his guards. Seal the archive wing. No one leaves with documents, phones, drives, ceremonial ribbons, or oath boxes. Then he looked at Lila. Not at the stain on her dress. Not at the signet pin. At her. Miss Mercer, I need you to come with me. Brielle laughed once, sharp and frightened. You cannot take her into the royal records. She is not ranked. Damon's wolf flashed gold behind his eyes. She outranks every lie in this room. Lila should have felt rescued. Instead, as she followed him past the silent pack and down the marble steps toward the locked archive below Silverpine, all she could think was that her mother might not have abandoned her at all. She might have been buried under the same truth Lila was finally carrying in her hands. The archive beneath Silverpine did not smell like books. It smelled like secrets that had been polished every week and still knew they were rotten. Lila followed Damon down a narrow staircase under the main hall, past steel doors, old stone, and security cameras blinking red in the corners like tired eyes. Above them, the moon oath ceremony was falling apart in whispers. Down here, the building felt too quiet, as if the pack had built an entire basement just to avoid hearing itself lie. Damon entered a code, pressed his thumb to a black glass panel, and waited while 3 locks opened one after another. How many people can get in here? Lila asked. 7, Damon said. How many should? Apparently none of them. The answer was so flat that Lila almost laughed, except her hands were still shaking around the hidden page. Inside, rows of oath boxes lined the walls. Silverpine leadership records. Made acknowledgments. Succession pledges. Rejection ribbons sealed in glass tubes. Every major decision the pack had made in the last 100 years sat in that room, labeled, dusted, and trusted by people who had never been invited to question it. Lila hated how familiar that felt. Damon pulled a drawer marked Mercer family and found it nearly empty. 1 folder. 2 witness ribbons. A photograph so faded the edges had curled. Lila touched the picture before she meant to. Her mother stood on the steps of this same pack house, younger than Lila remembered, white coat buttoned to her throat, dark blonde hair pinned back, one hand resting on a leather archive case. Beside her stood 3 council elders, including Malcolm Greaves, smiling like men who had already decided what history would cost. Lila swallowed hard. They told me she left because she could not handle pack life. Damon did not answer right away. He was reading the file behind the photograph, and something in his face had gone still in the worst way. Your mother was not just an archivist. Lila looked up. What was she? He handed her the paper. The old royal seal sat at the bottom, faint but real. Moon witness. Authorized to verify mate bonds, oath integrity, and succession claims in disputes involving the throne. Lila read it twice, because once would have changed her life too quickly. That is not possible. It is, Damon said. And it explains why they buried your record. The word buried landed hard. Lila pressed her thumb against the witness ribbon. A sent memory opened so sharply she had to grip the table. Her mother's voice did not come as sound, but as a feeling wrapped in cedar smoke and fear. A rushed signature. A locked door. Malcolm saying, "If the Mercer girl ever presents, seal her before the king learns what she can read." Lila let go of the ribbon. The room tilted. Damon stepped forward, then stopped himself, like he remembered she had not given him permission to catch her. "Lila, they knew before I was born," she said. Her voice sounded small in the steel room. "They did not reject me because I was unwanted. They made me unwanted so nobody would listen when I became useful." Damon's eyes flashed gold again, but he kept his voice low. "I will reopen every Mercer file by royal order." "And then what?" she asked. "You take me to the capital, hide me in some protected wing, and tell me it is for my own good?" His silence hurt more than an argument would have. There it was. The king. The throne. The calculation behind the rescue. Damon looked away first. "The council will move fast. If the Western Pax think I am choosing a disputed Omega over stability, they may challenge the leadership vote. So I am a problem. You are a witness." That is a nicer word. For the first time, Damon looked tired, not physically, but somewhere deeper. "I am trying to keep you alive politically long enough for the truth to matter." Lila folded the hidden page and placed it inside her mother's empty folder. "My mother tried that too." Above them, footsteps rushed across the ceiling. A guard knocked once on the archive door, then opened it with a pale face. "Your Majesty, Elder Greaves has called an emergency council session. He says Miss Mercer is to be removed from royal access until her stability can be evaluated." Damon's expression went cold. Lila looked at the empty Mercer drawer, then at the signet on her shawl. The truth had finally opened its eyes, and the whole pack was already trying to put it back to sleep. The emergency council session was not held in a courtroom. Silverpine was too old-fashioned to call it that and too honest, apparently, to admit what it really was. They used the glass council room above the east wing, where city lights glittered beyond the windows, and every chair had been placed to remind Lila exactly where she belonged. Damon sat at the head of the long table, black coat buttoned, face unreadable, the royal signet missing from his collar because it was still pinned to her shawl. Malcolm Greaves stood 2 seats to his right with a folder in his hand and victory tucked neatly behind his eyes. Brielle sat near the hearth in a cream dress, looking concerned in the way people looked concerned when they hoped the damage photographed well. Lila was not given a chair at first. Nobody said why. They just let the silence explain it. Damon noticed. His jaw tightened. "Miss Mercer will sit." A guard brought a chair. It was a small mercy, and somehow that made it worse. Malcolm opened the folder. "This review concerns the reliability of an unranked Omega making extraordinary claims against pack leadership." Lila looked at Damon, waiting for him to object to the word reliability. He did not. He was watching the room, measuring every alpha, every elder, every possible vote. She understood strategy. She hated that she understood it. "Miss Mercer," Malcolm continued, "when did you first begin believing you could read scent memory?" Believing. The word was chosen carefully. Not when did you discover. Not when were you trained. Believing, as if her gift were a childhood ghost under the bed. Lila folded her hands in her lap. "When I was 6, my mother gave me an oath ribbon and asked me what I smelled." Brielle tilted her head. "That sounds sweet. Not exactly legal proof." Lila kept her eyes forward. "Neither is pouring champagne on someone and calling it manners. But here we are." A cough moved around the table before it died quickly. Damon looked down for half a second, and she thought, absurdly, that he might have almost smiled. Then Malcolm placed a sealed ribbon on the table. "If your ability is real, read this." Damon spoke at last. No, the room stilled. Hope rose in Lila so fast it hurt. Then he finished, not without safeguards. "Her responses will be recorded, and no conclusions will be entered until royal verification is complete." Hope slipped through her fingers. Safeguards. Verification. Conclusions. He was protecting the case, not her dignity. Lila touched the ribbon anyway. Cold wax. Bitter ink. Someone afraid. Someone paid. Her stomach turned, but she kept her voice steady. This oath was altered after signing. Malcolm leaned forward. Convenient. Expensive, Lila corrected. Whoever did it used moon silver ink from the capital, not silver pine stock. A low murmur ran through the room. Damon's eyes sharpened. He had not known that. Good. Let him learn something from the witness he had allowed them to test like a locked box. Malcolm's smile thinned. Or perhaps Miss Mercer has been coached. Rook pushed against the air, so suddenly the windows gave a soft tremble. Damon stood. The room bowed without meaning to. Ask her one more question like that, he said, voice quiet enough to be dangerous without becoming loud. And you will lose more than this argument. It should have felt like rescue. It did not. It felt late. Lila stood, her chair scraping the floor. I am finished being reviewed. Damon turned to her. Lila. The sound of her name in his mouth nearly stopped her. Nearly. She removed the royal signet from her shawl and set it on the table between them. The little pin looked smaller there, stripped of warmth. You told them I was under royal protection, she said. You forgot protection is not the same as trust. For the first time all night, Damon had no answer ready. Lila walked out before the council could dismiss her, before Brielle could smile, before Malcolm could call her unstable. Outside the glass doors, the hallway was empty, cold, and bright. She made it 12 steps before the mate bond pulled once beneath her ribs, gentle and painful, like a hand she refused to take. Behind her, Damon said her name again. This time she did not turn around. By dawn, Lila Mercer was back in the same hall where Silverpine had laughed at her. Only this time she had walked in on purpose. No royal guard announced her. No Alpha King stood beside her. She came through the front doors with her mother's empty folder under one arm, the hidden registry page tucked inside it, and 12 years of learning how to keep her voice steady when people expected it to shake. The Moon Witness trial had been called for 9 in the morning, which was impressive, considering Malcolm Greaves had spent the night pretending there was nothing to investigate. Now he stood near the ceremonial fire in a dark suit, speaking quietly with Silverpine's alpha, Grant Vale, while Brielle Hawthorne watched from the second row with perfect hair and a face made for sympathy she did not feel. Lila stopped at the center of the marble floor. The champagne stain was gone from her dress, but she could still feel it, cold and sticky, like shame had a memory of its own. Miss Mercer, Malcolm said, turning with a pleasant smile. You arrived early. Lila looked at the gathered elders, the pack witnesses, the noble families, and the rows of wolves who had once lowered their voices when she passed. I arrived before anyone could decide I was too unstable to attend. A few people looked away. Good. Let them practice. Malcolm's smile thinned. This proceeding exists to determine whether your claims have merit. No, Lila said. This proceeding exists because you are scared mine do. That moved through the room faster than a growl. Silverpine's alpha stood. Careful, girl. Lila turned her head slowly. I was careful for 3 years. It did not make you honest. The old part of her expected punishment for saying it. The new part, the part awakened by the warm registry and the bond under her ribs, stayed standing. Malcolm motioned to the table before the fire. 3 sealed items lay there. Her rejection ribbon, Silverpine's loyalty oath, and a black oath box stamped with the royal succession mark. Lila had requested all 3 through an emergency witness filing before sunrise. She had not known if the clerk would honor it until the doors opened. Maybe the clerk had a conscience. Maybe the clerk was tired. In America, miracles sometimes looked like overworked women doing paperwork correctly. Lila placed her fingers on the rejection ribbon first. The room blurred at the edges. Cold wax rose beneath her skin, then silver ink, then a man's voice sang, "Seal her before the Mercer gift presents." She breathed through it. The bond tugged once, somewhere distant. Damon. He was close enough to feel, not close enough to save her. That was fine. She was not here to be saved. She opened her eyes. This rejection was forged. Malcolm sighed like a disappointed teacher. An emotional statement is not proof. Lila touched the loyalty oath next. Fear. Money. A promise made to the council instead of the throne. Her stomach rolled, but her voice held. Silverpine's alpha pledged private obedience to Elder Greaves before swearing public loyalty to the crown. The room erupted. Grant Vale went pale. Brielle stood halfway, then sat again when no one followed her. Malcolm's cane struck the floor. This is theater. The doors opened behind them. Damon Ward stepped in, snow on his black coat, his face unreadable, his wolf burning gold behind his eyes. Every wolf in the hall bowed by instinct. Lila did not. Damon did not ask her to. He stopped below the dais, not beside her, not in front of her, and said, "Continue, Miss Mercer." The permission was not control this time. It was space. Lila turned back to the final oath box. Her hand hovered over the royal succession seal, and the scent rising from it was so old, so bitter, that her eyes stung. Her mother had touched this box. Her mother had been afraid, but she had not backed down. Lila set her palm flat on the seal. The silver mark split open with a soft click, and every candle in the hall bent toward her. The oath box opened like it hated being honest. A thin line of silver light slipped out across the table, crawled over Lila's fingers, and turned warm against her skin. The whole hall watched in frozen silence as the royal succession seal unfolded into scent memory, not paper, not ink, but truth old enough to have dust on its teeth. Lila saw her mother standing in this same room 18 years earlier, one hand on the box, her voice steady while Malcolm Greaves told her she had misunderstood the law. She saw Grant Vale signing 2 oaths, one for the throne, one for the council. She saw Brielle's family name written beside a proposed royal mate contract before Damon had ever met her. Then came the worst part. A letter sealed in moon silver, addressed to the royal capital, warning that council elders were altering mate records to control future leadership. It had never been sent. Lila pulled her hand back as if the box had burned her, though it had not. Pain did not always need heat. Sometimes it only needed proof. Malcolm's voice cracked through the room. "This is a performance." Lila looked at him. "No. A performance is pretending a girl was rejected so nobody would believe her when she grew up." The words landed hard. Someone in the third row whispered her mother's name. Grant Vale stood too quickly. She has no authority to accuse pack leadership. Damon did not move from below the dais. His wolf filled the space around him, gold-eyed and silent, but Damon kept his hands at his sides. This was not his moment to take. "She has more authority than you do," he said. "You pledged yourself to a council elder before you pledged yourself to the crown." Grant's face went gray. Brielle rose slowly, her fingers tight around the back of her chair. "You do not understand what it is like," she said, her voice shaking now, though not from guilt alone. "My family was promised a place beside the throne. I trained for it. I gave up everything for it." Lila turned to her. "So you watched them bury me." Brielle's eyes shone, but she did not deny it. "I thought it was already done." That small sentence made the room colder than any confession could have. Not hatred, not rage, convenience. Lila nodded once, because if she spoke too soon her voice would break. Malcolm lifted his cane toward the guards. "Remove her. This trial is compromised." Nobody moved. He looked around and finally understood that fear had changed directions. Damon stepped forward one pace. "Elder Greaves, by royal authority, you are suspended from council duty pending full review of every registry you touched." Malcolm stared at him. "You would risk the Western packs for her?" Damon's eyes flashed gold. "No, I would risk the throne for the truth. Learn the difference." Then Damon looked at Lila, not as a king granting permission, but as a man asking if she was ready. She turned back to the hall, to the people who had laughed, whispered, filed papers, looked away, and called it tradition. "My name is Lila Mercer," she said. "My rejection was forged. My mother was silenced. And every oath built on that lie ends today." The hidden page in her folder burst into silver script, filling itself line by line with names, dates, signatures, and payments. The hall did not erupt this time. It bowed under the weight of what it had done. By sunset, the Silver Pine Pack House looked the same from the outside. All glass walls, pine shadows, and expensive stone washed gold by the last light. Inside, nothing was the same. Malcolm Greaves sat at the council table without his council pin, which made him look strangely smaller, like a man who had built his whole spine out of titles. Grant Vale had been removed from the alpha seat pending royal review. Brielle Hawthorne stood near the windows with her arms wrapped around herself, no longer surrounded by admirers, no longer polished enough to hide behind. Lila should have felt victory. She mostly felt tired. Truth had weight. Carrying it in front of everyone had taken more from her than she wanted to admit. Damon signed the suspension orders one by one, his handwriting clean, controlled, almost annoyingly perfect. No exile without review, he told the royal clerk. No property seizure. No public spectacle. Every penalty follows pack law. One of the younger alphas frowned. After what they did, that seems generous. Damon looked up. Justice that needs a crowd cheering for pain is just revenge in a better suit. Lila heard that from the edge of the room and hated how much she respected it. She wanted to be angrier. It would have been easier. Anger gave a person something to hold. Respect made things complicated. Brielle approached her before she could leave. For once, she did not glide. She walked like someone who had discovered floors were real. Lila turned. If you are about to say you are sorry because it is politically useful, I would rather you save your energy. Brielle flinched. Fair. I am sorry, she said anyway. Not enough. Not in the way you deserve. But I am. Lila studied her. The old version of herself would have accepted that apology quickly just to make the moment end. The new version was learning that peace bought with silence was still too expensive. You laughed when they called me rejected. Brielle swallowed. Yes. You knew the record was sealed wrong. I suspected. That is not better. No, Brielle whispered. It is not. Lila nodded once. Then live with the truth out loud. That is all I have for you. Brielle stepped back, pale but standing. It was not forgiveness. It was not cruelty either. It was a door closed without slamming. Later, Lila found herself on the balcony outside the council room, the cold air sharp enough to make her lungs wake up. The city below Silver Pine glittered with porch lights, traffic, and people who had no idea their pack history had just cracked open above them. Damon came out quietly, which was ridiculous for a man every wolf could feel from 50 feet away. He stopped beside her, leaving space between them. This time, she noticed. This time it mattered. I owe you an apology, he said. You owe me several. But one is a start. His mouth almost moved. Not a smile. Maybe the memory of one. Then it was gone. I protected the throne before I protected your dignity. Lila looked at him. The mate bond warmed, gentle and unwelcome in its timing. Yes, you did. I told myself it was strategy. It was. And cowardice. That surprised her. Damon Ward did not look like a man familiar with saying ugly things about himself. He looked like someone who had been raised to turn every flaw into policy. I should have trusted you before the room gave me permission to, he said. Lila looked back over the city. I do not want to be claimed because your wolf recognized me. His eyes softened, just a little. I know. I want to be chosen by the man, not dragged into history by the bond. Damon reached into his coat and placed the royal signet pin on the balcony rail between them. Then I will not ask you to wear it tonight. The words settled quietly. No demand. No royal command. Just space. Behind his eyes, Rook lowered his head, not defeated, not tamed, simply waiting. Lila touched the cold rail beside the pin, but did not pick it up. For the first time all day, Damon did not try to solve her pain. He stood with her in it, and somehow that felt more dangerous than being saved. 1 week later, the Capitol Pack Hall opened its doors to every alpha, beta, omega, and unaffiliated wolf who could fit under the steel and glass roof. Damon had moved the assembly out of the private royal chamber and into the public hall on purpose. Truth hidden in expensive rooms becomes another kind of lie, he had said that morning, which sounded very kingly until Lila reminded him the microphone would pick up his breathing if he stood too close. He had blinked once, adjusted the microphone by 2 inches, and pretended the correction had been his idea. Now Lila stood beside the throne, not behind it, not below it, and not at the back of the room where people had once expected her to disappear. She wore a simple navy dress, her mother's moon witness ribbon at her wrist, and no royal signet. Not yet. The hall quieted when Damon stepped forward. His crown was on today, silver and dark stone, but somehow he looked more human than he had the night he first saw her. Maybe power looked different when it stopped performing for itself. The Silver Pine records have been reviewed, he said. The rejection entered against Lila Mercer was forged. The Mercer bloodline is restored. The office of Moon Witness will no longer answer to council approval. A low sound moved through the crowd. Shame, relief, fear, maybe all three. Damon continued. From this day forward, no mate rejection, loyalty oath, or succession claim will be sealed without independent witness review. No council elder, no alpha family, and no crown, including mine, will have the right to bury the truth because it is inconvenient. Lila looked at him then. That last part had not been in the draft. Damon did not look back, but Rook stirred behind his eyes, calm and watchful. Not pushing, not claiming, waiting. After the law was read, people began to bow. Some bowed to Damon. More than a few bowed to Lila. A woman from Silverpine approached with red eyes and whispered, "I laughed that night. I am sorry." Lila studied her for a moment. Forgiveness did not rise on command. It was not a vending machine where guilt went in and absolution dropped out. "Then do better when the next person is standing alone," Lila said. The woman nodded and stepped away. Damon heard. Of course he did. Later, when the hall emptied and the winter sun came through the high windows, he joined Lila near the restored royal archive. Her mother's photograph now hung beside the first moon witness charter. No apology could give back the years. No law could return every dinner where Lila had eaten alone, every job denied with a polite smile, every time she had lowered her eyes because surviving felt safer than standing tall. But justice did not have to erase pain to matter. Sometimes it mattered because it gave pain a name and made the room repeat it correctly. Damon placed the signet pin on the archive table between them, the same way he had left it on the balcony rail. "I am not asking you to stand beside me because the bond says you should," he said. "I am asking because the throne is better when someone beside it is not impressed by it." Lila laughed softly. "That is your romantic speech. I was told honesty was preferred." "It is. Fortunately, you are improving." She picked up the pin and turned it over in her palm. The mate bond warmed, steady this time, not a command, not a chain, but a road neither of them had to walk blindly. Then Lila fastened the signet to her dress herself. Damon watched her do it, and for once the Alpha King did not look like a man claiming anything. He looked like a man being trusted with something he knew he had to earn every day. Outside, the Capitol bells rang for the new law. Inside, Lila opened the restored archive and wrote the first clean entry in her family's name. Loyalty is not obedience. Power is not ownership. Love is not a rescue. And an Omega's dignity is not granted by a king. It is recognized, or the king has failed.